Good morning. This is Teal Town, USA, with breaking news on a developing story from multiple sources and including the San Jose Sharks. Evander Kane is on unconditional waivers with the intention of terminating his deal with the San Jose Sharks. We welcome you to Teal Town Live. This is where we will discuss this developing story. If you want to be part of this, by all means, use the super chat option in the page or the app. And, of course, follow us on the social for continuing developments on the story. Find everything at tealtownusa.com. I am Erik Kuhre alongside Hockey Jerk. Jerk, good afternoon. Good morning.
What a day.
And
I mean, I think it's worth saying right from the beginning, it's a very tough position to be happy about somebody losing their job. But given everything that's transpired really the last 4 years, and especially everything that's happened recently, I think this is the right move. I think it's worth saying, you want to have some kind of, I don't even know. I mean, like the guy, he's not done anything to earn anybody feeling bad for him, but I don't know. You still hope that he can get his life in check and hopefully try to be a better person.
There's that fine line, right? It's like, yay for the Sharks, and of course, Sharks fans, a lot of them are probably saying hallelujah. But at the same time, you do hope that, with the time that he has now, that you hope that there's some help and that he can acknowledge that help and get that moving forward for his life, for his sake, for his life and everything. So let's just break it down. The Sharks announced, and it was kind of basically, it was Elliot Friedman that had the shot, had the tweet first.
The Frege bomb.
Yeah, the Frege bomb, dropping not even maybe 30 minutes ago.
A little over.
That the Sharks were going to place Evander Kane on unconditional waivers to terminate his deal. The Sharks put out a press release, about 35 minutes ago. The San Jose Sharks have informed Evander Kane that he has been placed on unconditional waivers with the intent to terminate his contract for breach of his NHL standard player contract and for violation of the AHL COVID-19 protocols. The club will have no further comment on this matter.
So couple of things to take note of here. So this is not a mutual termination. It's not the Sharks saying, "Hey, we want to get rid of you," and Evander Kane saying, "Hey, I want to leave," and it's mutual and they just agree to walk away from each other. This, by all indications and by all wording, this is the Sharks making a unilateral move to terminate Evander Kane's deal based on obviously breach of contract, violation of the rules of the league and everything like that. And so what I mean to say by that is, by this being a unilateral move by the Sharks, it does leave the NHLPA open to file a grievance, right, should they choose to.
And considering everything that has gone on within the last, not even 6 months for Evander Kane, you have to wonder what on earth happened in the AHL for Evander to kind of breach these COVID protocols at this point.
Yeah, it does make you wonder, because it's been well discussed, obviously, the last couple months, violating the NHL COVID protocols, allegedly submitting a fake vaccine card. We don't know if that's actually what happened, but by all accounts that is what happened. And now, it says here, as you mentioned, violation of the AHL COVID protocols. And, our friend Shang, Shang said that it sounded like Kane was going through it pretty bad with the COVID, right?
Right.
There was a pretty sizable number of positive tests from the Barracuda, and it sounded like everybody was asymptomatic or had mild symptoms except for Evander Kane. And so, obviously you have that in the back of your mind, and then you see here he violated the protocols in the AHL. So as you said, Erik, it just makes you wonder, like, what now? You know what I mean? And especially somebody who wanted to try and rehab their name and, get back in the NHL and sort of move on with their life and claim to want to be a better person. Who's to say if that's actually the truth? But
Yeah.
it opens a lot of questions, I feel like speculation is kind of dangerous in this situation, but it does make you wonder.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to overstep boundaries and wonder as to what the case was or something, but to go through the 21 game suspension with him, put him in that awkward situation after his first practice with the Barracuda,
Yeah, that
which
joke of a press conference.
yeah, I mean the tough part is with that we'll throw in the ESPN interview with Linda Cohn.
That was also a joke, by the way.
Yeah, I mean it's honestly everybody, it comes off as everybody else's their fault for
Right.
it, and I think there has to be something, and we probably won't ever find out as to what in the world happened, as to what led to this day. I mean, the Barracuda played last night. They lost 5-1 to the Henderson Silver Knights. Evander Kane wasn't on the ice for that game, but like you said, you've gone through all this turmoil. I mean, this whole thing started out really, really rosy and hopeful that everything will be changing with Joe Thornton picking him up from SFO overnight to welcoming him here, and things seem to be looking great for him. His first time he scored a hat trick, first time he scored 4 goals in a game, first time he got to play into the playoffs, and it just spiraled down from there.
Right, and it does, considering all of that stuff. I mean, obviously, we all know what we know now, right? But at the time, it was kind of believable that maybe the Sharks, they could help, I guess, rebuild the narrative. And I know I bought into the redemption tour, you bought into the
Yep.
redemption tour, and obviously we were both wrong to do that, but it like I said, considering how many opportunities he was given on this redemption tour and how everything appeared to be going well for him, it just, again, it's kind of, you know it it doesn't surprise, like, it's not a surprise because it's like they've done it before, they do it again, and so it's kind of like, yeah, that's just who you are. But at the same time, it really makes you wonder, like, what's going on the personal level. You know what I mean? Like, why does this keep happening? And maybe it's just as simple as Evander Kane's not a good dude. I don't know. You know what I mean? But
Right.
it's, like I said, there is a lot to think about. There's a lot of moving pieces to the situation, and you're right. Like, I would be surprised if we find out 10% of everything going on.
Right. I mean, the Sharks usually try to keep a lot of things quiet as much as possible. Uh, they aren't going to come out and say anything else for that matter. They're pretty much done with it. We technically speaking, this is a Joe Will issue. We have not heard if Doug Wilson has returned to the organization. He was dealing with a medical matter.
Mhm.
But now let's talk about on the case for the Sharks here. So, barring something crazy, and I can't see anybody, picking him up on unconditional waivers. His contract's going to be terminated. Like you said, the PA might, yeah, file a grievance for this. But for the Sharks, what does this mean for them going forward?
Well, for starters, the Sharks, they're going to pick up some cap space, by having Evander Kane in the AHL. He's not costing the full $7 million. He's costing just over 5.75. So they saved a bit of money by having him in the AHL there. But now, if this termination goes through, and assuming the NHL doesn't file a grievance, or if they do, it doesn't come to fruition, the Sharks are going to find themselves with even more cap space than they had just by sending him to the AHL. And according to Cap Friendly, once everything goes through, the Sharks would be looking at just a hair over $7 million in cap space, and that's also with a pretty full roster and a taxi squad. So you could even make the argument that cap number would go up just by virtue of roster transactions and that kind of stuff as the roster gets healthy. But it puts the Sharks in an interesting position. I think obviously the first question on everybody's mind, whether the Sharks are first, worst, or in the middle, the question is, how do you spend this cap space, right? And we kind of talked about it before. I don't know that you do. Like, I wonder if you just keep I mean, it's kind of, there's a couple different routes they can take this. They can just keep banking the cap space and then take on bad contracts at the trade deadline, or not bad contracts, rather retained salary contracts at the deadline like they did last year and acquire some picks out of it. That's an option. An option is to maybe sniff around the league and see, hey, is there a guy out there available for trade who we can keep beyond this year? Somebody like Jake DeBrusk comes to mind. Even though he's not signed after this year, he is a restricted free agent. That's something to think about. I wonder, and especially too with, I mean, how long have we been talking about it, right? The Sharks can't score goals, it seems. Like, it would make a lot of sense for them if they do want to claim to be a competitive team. It would make a lot of sense for them to try and acquire somebody, a decent player who has some term left. Somebody that can be, as Doug Wilson likes to say, for now and for the future, right? I wouldn't, I wouldn't fire it up on a rental. I wouldn't do that. But, somebody I think who's going to be here long term, or you just save it and you use it to help teams who need to retain salary down the road.
Yeah. And to me, I think it's the first part. Like you said, I think right now the Sharks are kind of in that limbo. They're right on the bubble of the playoffs. But let's be honest here. What's the plan going forward? Do you use this money for Tomas Hertl? Do you use this money for Barabanov, who I know you are like eagerly anticipating?
They should just give the $7 million to Barabanov, right?
No. Oh, wait, what? Hang on here. But I mean, there's definitely some ideas as to what they want to use this for. Getting out of the terminating of his contract is a big one. You get scot-free. You're not leaving with part salary. You're not buying him out.
Right.
And if the Sharks can do this, that's a huge win to get out of a contract from a player that's given them headaches within the last. I mean, let's be honest, within the last 12 months. I mean, 6 months from when stuff really hit the fan, but everything going on with his bankruptcy case and such,
Yeah, really. Last January was kind of when the snowball started forming, right?
Right. With his whole bankruptcy issues and definitely owing a casino a decent amount of money. And then, of course, July 31st hit with the Instagram post from his now estranged wife, Anna, along with a number of, back and forth on social media, which just did not look good for not just for Evander, but for the Sharks organization, who really, let's be honest here, outside of one incident in 2006, really haven't gone through any sort of a PR nightmare like this before.
Yeah, it's definitely been an unprecedented kind of situation with everything that's going on, especially for, like I said, this snowball started forming last January, and it's been a lot for 1 year, right? And I think it goes without saying, a lot of people, myself included, it's kind of a relief to know that this headache and this distraction is pretty close to going away. Obviously, as we mentioned at the top, the PA is probably going to want to have a conversation about this, and as they should. I mean, whether or not you believe it's morally right or wrong for them to want to talk about it, it is their right to talk about it.
Right.
And so obviously that's going to be a conversation, and we'll see. It's going to all go from there. And we kind of talked about it just before, just before we went live. But I'm wondering. Obviously, he's in the AHL. And he only played a handful of games there, obviously, and he was out in off the Sharks main roster, out of the locker room. Even though he's on the Barracuda, out of sight, out of mind for the Sharks players. But I am still wondering if him. I am still wondering if him being in the organization and that small possibility of a comeback on the table. I wonder if it was still an anchor for some of the Sharks players. Like, even though he wasn't there, it makes me wonder if the possibility of him coming back was still weighing on guys. And maybe it wasn't, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, but it's just something I think is worth thinking about too, because it's like we said, there's a lot going on. There's a lot to think about it with this situation.
And it's not like it's just some throwaway player and just hanging out in the AHL, getting the call up here and there. I mean, this guy was your leading scorer over the last couple of seasons, where you had issues scoring offensively, dealing with injuries like from Couture and Hurdle a couple of years ago. Meyer had his ups and downs. Kane was kind of that consistent guy doing it all, and I think we even were praising him considering everything that was going on in his personal life. He's going out and playing some pretty decent hockey, which leads to that now with his contract being terminated, barring any issues, any red tape. He's considered a UFA, and if he signs before March 21st, he will be eligible to play in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Who on earth might want to grab a guy like that now that you can, pay him whatever your heart desires? You're not on the boat for at least half or this full deal.
Yeah, I don't know, because as we've seen, as we've seen with the NHL, there's a lot of teams and a lot of people, they're willing to look past a lot of stuff, and it you know it wouldn't surprise me if, honestly, as soon as the contract is cleared, it wouldn't surprise me if it's known that certain teams have interest in Evander Kane. Like I said, there's a lot of people willing to let stuff go and ignore certain certain stuff. And I don't know, I'm kind of the belief, and I think the Sharks are too, even though I personally think the Sharks didn't go about this whole situation in the best way. They still said, hey, this guy was our best player last year, but there's still a lot of baggage that we're not really comfortable with, and so we're going to remove him. Again, didn't really go about it in the best way, but ultimately I think what they were trying to do, I think they tried to do the right thing, right?
Right.
And not every team is going to be like that, especially teams who think they have a chance at winning a Stanley Cup. They're going to say, well, this guy scores 30 goals, and that's all we need him to do is score 30 goals for us. And I don't know. I mean, it's hard for me to say, oh, this team or that team, but I'm certain teams will be interested now that there's no no term left. I mean, it was going to be 3 years after this year, and even at the bare minimum bare minimum salary based on retention and everything, he was still going to be a $2 million player. And so if you could, a team that's going to be able to get him for just the rest of this season at league minimum, it's going to be attractive to them. Again, whether or not you think that's morally right, that's just the way it is,
Right. And that's going to be an interesting one to see who's after him, how much do they pay them, and go from there. Here's a question I haven't kind of on Cardiac 19 mentioning it. What would be the cap penalty or revenge going to be?
Well,
could there be
if
anything?
if nothing, so say the NHLPA, say they don't file a grievance, or they do and they don't win the grievance, then nothing. say the NHLPA, they file a grievance and it ends up being that the PA is in the right, and the Sharks made an error by unilaterally terminating his contract. It could be as simple as a cap penalty, similar to the Mike Richards situation, or it could be a situation of you're not allowed to terminate this contract, so you're stuck with the whole thing. It's kind of all ends of the spectrum. I mean, it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyway. The best case scenario for the Sharks is that the PA doesn't file a grievance, or they do and they lose the grievance. I mean, that's the best case scenario for them.
And that would be the best, is to just kind of just wipe the hands clean of it. If they do have a penalty, I mean,
the way I kind of explain that is would 500,000 is a lot nicer than 7 million.
True.
That's kind of how I think about it.
How refresh me with the Mike Richards thing in regards to they terminated his deal, and what's the cap space or cap penalty that the Kings are doing?
So the Kings, the short version of the story is the Kings were already looking to get out of the Mike Richards contract. It was a contract they wanted to move or get themselves rid of, and Mike Richards was detained at the Canadian border for trying to bring an illegal substance across the border. Some say it was pills, but I don't know that it's ever been confirmed. And the Kings were like, "Oh, hey, whoa, broken rules, terminate, gone, bye, see you later." And it was like, "Whoa, okay, like he hasn't even been charged with anything. You heard about this 10 minutes ago, and you're terminating the deal." So, the PA did file a grievance, and they ended up determining that, yeah, the Kings were in the wrong by doing this, but they still allowed him to leave the LA Kings, but there was a recapture penalty of 5 years, and that was $1.3 million a season. But there was also a termination fee on the cap as well for hold your breath, 17 years, of varying numbers. The highest being 1.8 million, the lowest being 250,000. So really, wow, not that big of a deal, but. And again, I think you're only going to see a Mike Richards situation if the PA files a grievance and it's determined that the Sharks, were in the wrong by terminating this deal.
Yeah, and I think there are a number of reasons which the Sharks, obviously didn't go through in the press release, but again, we would have to speculate, if anything, as to something must have gone down recently with Evander Kane for the Sharks to warrant this. So this will become a developing story. It is a developing story. We'll see what transpires down the road. Jerk, thank you as always, my friend. I appreciate you jumping on, having the knowledge for explaining a lot of this to our fellow viewers and listeners.
Yeah, and I think too, kind of one last thing sort of to think about too, when as Evander Kane's suspension was getting ready to be up and over with, the NHL said, and the Sharks were told, and everybody was saying, the suspension is the punishment for violating the NHL COVID protocols. So again, whether or not you believe that is right, that's how the NHL saw the situation. Was the 21-game suspension was a justified punishment for violating the protocols. Now that the contract has been terminated, however long, 6 weeks after the fact, and mentioning of the AHL COVID protocols, this is a separate incident from what transpired over the fall.
So in other words, somebody didn't learn their lesson.
Exactly.
So
and also one more thing, totally unrelated. For the game tonight, obviously you're going to catch After Dark. I'm assuming Erik will be there with somebody else. Mm-hmm. And Nick Bonino just put into the COVID protocol today,
along with assistant coach John McClain. The Sharks PR just tweeted this out just a moment ago. So Bonino, assistant coach John McClain joined Logan Couture and Lane Pearson in Sharks members in the organization that are in the league's COVID protocols. So Bonino is out. You're going to see somebody else get into the lineup. So
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, after, thankfully today is Couture's last day on the protocol, so that's obviously good, right?
mhm.
But I mean, it's going to be another interesting lineup for tonight, to say the least. I mean, could we see, top 6 forward Scott Reedy? I mean, who's to say, right?
Right. I mean, it's going to be interesting. And oh, by the way, you're playing against your former goaltender in Martin Jones. Can Nick Merkley finally get into the lineup? He's been wanting to prove himself in the NHL with the Sharks. So there's that. So to reiterate again, the Sharks place Evander Kane on unconditional waivers for the purposes of terminating his contract. And of course, just coming down just a couple of minutes ago, Nick Bonino and assistant coach John McLean are now in COVID protocol, which means the Sharks will have a very interesting lineup to go into in less than 4 hours as they take on the Philadelphia Flyers. So that'll do it for here. Please, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button right now on our YouTube channel. We will be back on after the Sharks take on the Philadelphia Flyers. That's a 4 p.m. start from Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia. We'll be back here with myself, Felix Chow, and Ian Reed for a very interesting Teal Town After Dark. Remiss to say, Hockey Jerk is great with AJ on the Pucknologist. They'll be breaking down their thoughts on the Kane situation on Sunday night at 7 p.m. So be on the lookout for that. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Of course, hit that notification bell. That'll notify you when we do go on the air like this. There won't be any prep for anything. We will just come on the air to inform you of the situation. So with that, thank you for watching. We will be back with you
Real quick.
Go ahead.
Real quick. Shout out to PJ48, $5 super chat.
Thank you very much, PJ. Appreciate it. When news breaks, we like to try to break it as much as possible and break it down for everybody to be informed as to what's going on with the day-to-day operations with the San Jose Sharks. So, Jerk, your final thoughts?
Final thoughts. It's a good day if you're the Sharks. Assuming everything happens the way they want, soon they'll be able to clear everything out with this whole situation, and they can, there's a lot to look forward to. They can kind of put everything in the past. And Kevin Weeks also saying there's a chance there could be a grievance, but also saying he would be a free agent tomorrow. So based on that, it sounds like they're going to want to get some action on this situation as soon as possible.
Yep. So be on the lookout for that. And Dustin, thank you very much for your donation, $9.99. About time I donate, LOL. We appreciate all the donations. Of course, if you're not aware, donations do go help support keeping this whole thing afloat. So we appreciate each and every one of you on that one. Again, After Dark following the Sharks and Flyers tonight, and then Pucknologist tomorrow night at 7 p.m. with Hockey Jerk and AJ. So until later this afternoon and evening, keep it real, keep it teal, keep it real teal. Have a good afternoon, everyone.